Sorry about that. Good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. You are on the webinar this morning for information and overview about the Early Childhood Education Grant through the Ohio Department of Education. The recording, just so that you're aware, the webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on the Ohio Department of Education website. So if you know of individuals who are interested in listening to it but were unable to join us today, if you could please share with others that it is being recorded and will be posted there. Additionally, at the end of the presentation, we're going to tell you about some additional webinars that we're going to be hosting in the next couple of weeks and months, as well as some follow-up dates and some projected timelines. So you'll want to also be checking the Early Childhood Education website on the Ohio Department of Education website for important dates and information for the upcoming webinars, as well as the topic areas that will be covered. So my name is Janine Kale. I am the Assistant Director in the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness. I'm actually fairly new to the position. I have been with the Department of Education for about a month now, and I am specifically working with the Early Childhood Education program. So I will be one of your presenters today. With me, I have Star Cox, who is also an Early Learning Program Specialist in the Office of Early Learning and School Readiness, and probably some of you who have been participating in the Early Childhood Education program know Star. She has been a wealth of information for me and super helpful as I learn this new program, so she's going to be sharing some information this morning as well. A little bit about our agenda today. We're going to do a basic introduction and overview of the Early Childhood Education program. So for those of you, again, that are already participating, some of this will be some review information. And for those of you that are joining and kind of getting your first glance of information about the Early Childhood Education Grant, this will provide some important introductory information for you. We will also be talking about program requirements in terms of who's eligible to apply and some of the requirements if you are interested in applying for the grant next year if you're not currently funded that you would need to meet. We'll be talking specifically about what children are eligible to participate and a little bit about the sliding fee scale. We also are going to do a very high-level overview of some of the changes that you can expect for fiscal year 2017, which would, of course, encompass the 2016-2017 school year. And then at the end of the presentation, we will have a time for question and answers. You are all on mute right now so that we don't have any background noise, but you will have an opportunity if you use the chat bubble on your screen to type in questions, and then as time allows at the end of the presentation, we'll review those questions and hopefully provide as many answers as we're able to today. I also did want to let you know that based on some of the questions that we received today, it may help drive our agenda for future webinars. So if there's a particular topic area that you would like us to go a little bit more in depth about or need a little bit more information about, if you could include that in your chat function at the end of the presentation, that will help us know better how to kind of plan the agendas and the overview and the sessions for the next two webinars that we have scheduled. So we're going to begin today with an introduction and an overview of the Early Childhood Education Grant. The program does provide funding for high-quality early learning services to eligible preschool children, and that can be provided through full or part-day center-based or family child care programs. We'll talk a little bit about the types of programs that are eligible to participate for the funding. Programs do have to meet specific early learning program standards, and those are monitored through the use of Ohio's quality rating and improvement system called Step Up to Quality that hopefully all of you are familiar with. If you do need more information, we're going to talk a little bit about Step Up to Quality in the next couple of slides, but if you do need more information or would like to learn more about Step Up to Quality, you can go to the earlychildhoodohio.org website, and again, that's earlychildhoodohio, it's all one word, .org website. So in terms of the funding for the Early Childhood Education Program, It is funded through state general revenue funds. The current funding for the 2015-16 fiscal year is $60 million. And then next year, for the fiscal year 2017, which runs through July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, will increase to $70 million. Currently, eligible providers are those that are funded ECE districts and 3 through 5-star rated step-up to quality programs that are licensed by the Department of Job and Family Services. The funding does allocate a $4,000 per child amount, and programs are funded for a certain amount of slots. This year, in the 2015-16, with the additional funding that we received through the budget, we were able to serve and are currently serving an additional 3,675,000 children through the program. The one thing I also did want to mention as we're on this slide is that the early childhood education funding, when we talk about that funding stream, we are encompassing programs and funding sources that were previously referred to as early childhood expansion or early childhood entitlement. We really want people to think about this now as a singular funding stream, regardless of kind of when a program may have received initial funding and what it was called at the time when they received that funding. When we talk about the early childhood education funding, we're really talking about all of those things and just referring to them now as a single program, because the requirements and the eligibility for programs and for families and the requirements that need to be met are the exact same regardless of whether you initially came in under entitlement or expansion or now what we're just calling early childhood education funding. So we want people to kind of hear that message and start to understand what that term means and how we're shifting from calling it entitlement or expansion to just now calling it early childhood education funding. In terms of the programs that are eligible to receive the funding, we really have opened it up to basically all types of programs now. So school districts, educational service centers, joint vocational schools, star-rated community-based providers, chartered non-pubs, all of those individual types of programs are eligible. That also does include home providers, so those would be the Type A, which is the larger family child care homes, and the Type B, which is the smaller family child care homes that are licensed by the Department of Job and Family Services. And any of those, whether they be Type A, Type B, or the more traditional child care center, in order to participate in this program, do have to have a 3, 4, or 5-star rating. We typically refer to those as highly rated programs in the Step Up to Quality program. So again, the eligible providers here in terms of how we determine who is an eligible provider and kind of what that formula looks like. Again, it does have to be a high quality, meaning 3, 4, or 5-star rated program that can begin to serve children immediately. So once awarded the slots, the expectation is at the beginning of the next school year, programs will immediately be able to begin serving children. The slots are distributed throughout the entire state. We do have the state divided up into 12 service delivery areas, and so the slots, there are a number of slots that are allocated within each of those 12 delivery systems. Within each of those service delivery systems, the highest needs districts were identified, and those are the ones, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about the criteria in terms of how we identified the highest needs programs, but the highest needs programs, the highest needs areas in terms of school districts are identified, and then within each of those areas, the programs that are eligible then are identified. So it's kind of a multi-step process to figure out who's eligible. We are currently right now working through that process for the 2016-17 school year, fiscal year 17. We're starting to work closely with the Department of Job and Family Services and the data people here within the Department of Education to begin to identify the programs that will be eligible to apply for additional slots with the new money that will be available for fiscal year 2017. In terms of how we come up with who the highest needs district is, we actually have a formula that we use, and we look at 3 different factors. We look at the percentage of kindergarten children who, in previous years, we used the emerging readiness level on the KRA. This year, we're hoping to have information from our new kindergarten readiness assessment, and we'll be looking at that information as one of the 3 factors that go into identifying the high needs district. The second thing that we look at is the percentage of economically disadvantaged kindergarten children. And then the third part of the equation that we look at is the percentage of 3rd grade children who are not proficient on the reading portion of the Ohio Achievement Assessment. So there's a formula that we use, and when we say we, I really mean our data folks that go and look at all 3 of those factors, combine them into a single score, and then based on that score, we determine within each of the 12 different regions across the state who the highest needs district are within each of those different regions. In terms of previous outreach that we've used then to let people and programs and districts and the various programs that are eligible to participate in early childhood education, we do a direct mailing to the eligible programs to give them a little bit more information about the program and let them know that they're eligible. We also try to do things like this webinar. We have listservs. We try to reach out to different advocacy groups, including the Early Childhood Advisory Council and the Child Care Advisory Council, just so that we can get the word out to let people know that additional funding is available and then who those eligible programs are within the eligible districts. In state fiscal year 2016, which is the current fiscal year that we're operating within, we had 671 eligible programs that were invited to apply for the slots. For the very first time last year, we actually were able to use an online application process, and I think that went fairly smoothly. We did have some lessons learned from that, and so for those of you that used that process last year, you'll see something similar with some additional tweaks to it this year in terms of applying for the slots. Of the 671 that were eligible, we had 101 grantees that applied for new slots. And like I mentioned earlier, we were able to award 3,675 newly allocated slots this year. We do have a total right now then of 363 grantees. That included folks that were previously awarded the early childhood education funds, as well as the new grantees that were awarded slots for the first time this year, for a total of 14,765 slots that were awarded to fund preschool children in fiscal year 2016. I'm going to turn it over to Star now, and she's going to talk a little bit about the program requirements in terms of what the expectations are for programs that are awarded slots.
Program requirements for ECE-funded programs are to provide services for children for at least 12.5 hours per week for 455 hours per academic year. For any provider for which the 12.5 hours per week schedule creates a hardship, we offer participants to complete a waiver for which the provider shows evidence that the provider is working in collaboration with a preschool special education program, or the provider may submit a waiver to the department requesting an alternate schedule. If the department approves a waiver for an alternate schedule, the provider provides services for less than the time standard early childhood education schedule, the department may reduce the provider's annual allocation proportionately. Under no circumstances shall any annual allocation be increased because of the approval of an alternate schedule. Note that a program may arrange to serve children through an AM or PM or full or part day options as long as the child receives 12.5 hours of instruction per week. ECE programs may not add a new site that would require an additional or a revised ODE or ODGFS licensed site. You must serve children in an existing licensed site. Programs may not add new sites that would require new licenses. Children must already be served in an already existing and licensed site that is highly rated and step up to quality, or an existing early childhood education grantee site. What happens if your rating is removed or reduced during the year? Note, if your rating is removed, it can or might reduce your funding, and it could impact your funding for the next academic year. All ECE funded programs are required to participate in Step Up to Quality. They must be highly rated at a 3, 4, or 5-star rating for the entire grant award period. Programs must maintain fiscal control and accounting procedures to ensure the disbursement of and accounting for these funds. Administration costs may not exceed 15% of the program budget. You must, as an ECE provider, develop a sliding fee scale for the ECE programs and report that annually. Children from families whose income is at 100% of the federal poverty level or below may attend tuition-free. Children from families whose income is between 101%, 101%, or 200% of the federal poverty level attend on a prorated tuition basis. Once a program has enrolled the number of children for which the grant was funded, the children from families whose income is above 200% of the federal poverty level may be enrolled on tuition basis. Note, all children included in the funded number must be from families who earn no more than 200% of the federal poverty level, with the exception of children with disabilities. Public districts, ESCs, and JVSs licensed by ODE must report child and teacher program data into EMIS. Our ODE licensed chartered non-public schools and OGFS licensed preschool programs must use the EAS system, the Enterprise Application System. That is where you'll report all the data on systems to report child information, teacher and program qualifications, and any demographics. Right now, Step Up to Quality verifies that you have completed all assessments, and we are going to require that you report these progress information for individual children in another instance. Program requirements. Programs report on various data that will include child reporting, which includes demographic, attendance, poverty level, disability status, assessments, and screening information. You also be required to report on teachers, your names, the education, the licensure, and certification, your size, location information, and classroom size, and classroom demographics. All programs must use the early learning assessment in 2 required assessment windows, which is the fall and the spring. The early learning assessment is intended to be a process through which early childhood teachers collect and use assessment information to tailor instruction to the individual needs of each child and report on child progress twice a year. As an ECE grantee, you will also be required to complete the Health and Development Survey. All programs will be completing the Health and Development Survey this year. This will include tracking information on child health and dental screenings, which include visions and hearings, height and weight. Also, any referrals and follow-ups that occurred with those screenings. The survey will also address questions on individual programs, sliding fee scale, and how it is calculated.
Thank you, Star. So the next part that we're going to talk about is the child eligibility, and some of you may have heard that there are upcoming changes to child eligibility for fiscal year 2017. So the next couple of slides that I'm going to talk about are talking about eligible children and who is eligible in terms of children and families currently in this fiscal year. And then more towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the potential changes that you can look forward to for fiscal year 2017. So for right now, in terms of eligible children, the program does serve children who are 3 and 4 years old, but who are not yet eligible to participate in kindergarten. The program is also designed to serve children who are under 200% of the federal poverty level, and so STAR referenced a couple of slides ago in terms of a sliding fee scale and different amounts of potential tuition that could be charged to families based on where they fall percentage-wise on the federal poverty level. But the program does require that all of the children who are enrolled are 200% or under of the federal poverty level. Also currently for this year, the program is intended to serve children who are newly enrolled, and so that would be children who are not receiving any other local, state, or federal public funding to participate in a preschool program. The program does determine the eligibility of the child or the family, and we do have some resource documents that are available on the Early Childhood Education website that talk a little bit about how you determine eligibility, because we do know that there are some programs, if you've not had the opportunity to do that yet, need a little bit of guidance. So if you're interested in how you would determine eligibility or what information or criteria go into determining if a family falls within that 200% or under. If you're interested in more information on that, we do have some resource documents available. Programs can use a variety of ways to determine that eligibility and verify that eligibility, and that would include things like current pay stubs from family members, a letter from an employer, past W-2 tax information, or any other forms of documentation that a family may have that verifies their income. Also, providers who are participating in the Early Childhood Education program are able to develop their own forms for eligibility and are required to keep that documentation on site so that if there's ever a question or an audit, the program would be able to verify that they have checked that information and have determined that the family meets that criteria. In terms of the sliding fee scale that STAR mentioned earlier, one of the requirements of the program is that each program does have to have a written, documented sliding fee scale that they provide to families. That doesn't mean that programs actually have to charge families a fee for the service. It's just that they have to have a written scale to ensure that all of the families that are enrolling in the program are treated consistently. The programs may charge a sliding fee scale or a proration of a tuition for any children who come from families with an income between 101 and 200% of the federal poverty level. If a child, however, falls below the 100, at or below the 100% of the poverty level, then the program is not allowed to charge a sliding fee scale or a prorated tuition for those families. The only exception to that would be children who are participating in the preschool special education program, in which case the family eligibility criteria does not need to be met if they qualify for that program. So now we wanted to take a little bit of time to highlight some of the upcoming changes that people can begin to think about as you're thinking about potential application for additional funding, or what that might look even if you don't want additional funding, but how it may change the dynamics of your program based on the statutory requirements that were included in House Bill 64. So we want to take a little bit of time, and again, I want to reiterate that all of these changes that I'm going to be sharing with you this afternoon apply to all early childhood education funding slots. So again, if you are a program that initially received entitlement funds or expansion funds or currently have slots but you're not anticipating that you're going to be applying for any new ones, these changes that I'm highlighting right now will apply to all of those different funding streams or when you initially came into the program. So the first requirement that was included in House Bill 64 is that work be done to help align the early childhood education program, which is managed out of the Department of Education, with the child care, publicly funded child care program, which is managed out of the Department of Job and Family Services. So there is a leadership team that has been formed across the two agencies with support from the governor's office, who are meeting regularly to come to some work and to complete some work around the alignment of three distinct different policy areas. And the first one would be a common application, so that families would submit and would fill out one application, and it would help determine their eligibility for either or both of the early childhood education and the publicly funded child care program. So the common application is the first thing. The second one is eligibility, and again, this would be what a family is eligible for based on their poverty, federal poverty level, and also meeting various work or school requirements. And then the third one would be a co-payment, and this again would align to the sliding fee scale and co-payments that are currently required as being participating in the publicly funded child care, and whether or not programs who are participating in the early childhood education program would also be charging a co-payment, or what those might look like. We are still in the process of working on that alignment, and at this point, other than to share with you that what the statutory requirement is and to let you know that we have a leadership group that's working on that, we don't have further details about specifically what that's going to look like yet that we're ready to share out, but as soon as we do, we will be letting people know and obviously posting additional resources and guidance and information on the early childhood education website. Some of the other fiscal year 2017 changes that are going to be happening, and the first one I alluded to earlier, is that we are going to have a change in terms of the children that are eligible. So instead of being able to serve both 3- and 4-year-old children, this program requirements will shift, and children will be required to be 4 years old by the district kindergarten cutoff date in order to be eligible to participate in the early childhood education program. We have had, again, a number of questions around different age-related questions in terms of children who might turn 4 throughout the school year and those type of things. And so we are in the process of getting a little bit of clarification around those issues, and hopefully by either our next webinar or the one after that, we'll be able to provide a little bit more information specifically around that 4-year-old issue. But we do want to highlight it right now, again, as programs think about the current funding you have, or if you're thinking about applying for additional or new funding next year, to really think about capacity and what the need is within your program and within your community, knowing now that it will be 4-year-olds who are eligible instead of 3- and 4-year-olds. The other new piece that is introduced in House Bill 64 that will become effective with the fiscal year 2017 changes is that programs will have the option to extend the day with child care or other dollars. So what this means is that a child could be enrolled in the early childhood education program and meet the 2.5-hour daily requirement, and then use wraparound dollars, child care dollars, or other publicly funded dollars in order to extend the day for families that really do need a full day of care. In 2017, we will allocate all of the existing slots that were allocated this year, and then we will also have funding to award 2,450 new slots. So that will be 2,450 new children that will be able to be served in fiscal year 2017. Some other changes I just wanted to highlight for those programs that took advantage of the waiver option this year. Next year there will be 2 circumstances, and these are a little bit different than what our policy was this year in terms of granting the waiver requests. So for next year, if a particular program is not able to meet the 2.5-hour weekly minimum requirement, and that is a requirement in addition to 455 hours per year, If they're not able to meet the 2.5-hour requirement, you still have to meet the 455-hour per year requirement. And so that is a little bit different than last year. The other circumstance, and the other thing just to let you know too, is that waiver does need to be requested annually. So if a program requested and received a waiver this year, don't assume that you're automatically going to be able to just use the same waiver and carry it forward into the next year. It will be an annual requirement that those waiver requests are updated. And then the second situation in which we will be considering a waiver request is if there are extenuating circumstances that make the requirement not achievable in terms of the hours, the weekly hours, and the yearly 455-hour requirement. And again, based on what those extenuating circumstances are, that will only be able to occur once. So that is not something that just because you receive it one year, you can automatically assume that those same extenuating circumstances are going to allow you to receive the waiver request approval the following year. Also, as Star mentioned earlier, if for some reason a program is granted a waiver request, the annual amount of the allocation, which is $4,000 per child or per slot, could be reduced proportionately based on the number of hours that you're actually providing the early childhood education program to a particular child or family. So I want to talk a little bit about Step Up to Quality and the requirements, again, for fiscal year 2017 that are going to be slightly different than they may have looked for programs in 2016. We are currently in the process right now of determining all of the different locations where programs are serving children through the Early Childhood Education Grant. And so every single location that is serving children with early childhood education dollars, that particular location has to have a rating of a 3, 4, or 5-star rating. Again, House Bill 64 was very explicit in saying that all ODE programs, even those that received funding prior to, or didn't necessarily receive new funding, but that have ongoing funding, do have to be rated by July 1st of 2016 at a 3, 4, or 5, again, a highly rated program. So one of the things that we're working on very diligently in our office right now is trying to determine who all of the different site locations are, and where all those site locations are, and what programs still need to apply for and receive a 3, 4, or 5-star rating if they're licensed by the Department of Education. Any of the Department of Job and Family Services programs that are ECE recipients had to have been rated a 3, 4, or 5 in order to receive the funding in the first place. So those programs are already currently rated as a 3, 4, or 5. This year we are hoping to get the application process out much earlier than we did in previous years so that programs will know, hopefully by the end of the school year or shortly thereafter, what slots they can anticipate to have for the following school year in 2016-17. Because of that, we know that there are some programs that will not yet be 3, 4, or 5-star rated that would like to receive early childhood education funds. And so what we have done is put together a timeline and worked in conjunction with the Department of Job and Family Services to say that any program that is interested in submitting an application to receive new funds next year must submit a registration for a 3, 4, or 5-star rating by April 1st of 2016. So we are hoping that we are going to actually have the applications out sometime in early March, and so we would potentially conditionally award a program slots, and then the condition would be that they would meet these two deadlines. The first is that they would have to submit a registration for a 3, 4, or 5-star, and again, these would be programs that are in eligible school districts that are eligible for the funding. If a program is conditionally awarded slots and meets their first requirement of submitting their registration for a 3, 4, or 5 by April 1st of 2016, then the next deadline that would need to be met is that they must be recommended for a 3, 4, or 5-star rating by July 1st of 2016. And again, we will be working very closely with the people within our office here who do the Step Up to Quality verification process, as well as the people within the Department of Job and Family Services to prioritize those programs that are conditionally funded and that have submitted their registration by April 1st in order to be able to recommend them for a 3, 4, 5-star rating by July 1st. If we do have programs that submit the registration or that are conditionally awarded funds and the program is not able to meet either the April 1st or the July 1st deadline, then the funds that they were conditionally awarded would be reallocated to other programs that do meet those requirements. So that's a little bit about how Step Up to Quality is going to be working. So again, one of the things that you will see as a revision to the application this year is we're going to get very specific if you are a program that is receiving funding but you are serving children at multiple locations. You're going to have to be very specific about the locations, not just who the financial person is or the program is, but specifically exactly what locations you're going to be serving children at using the early childhood education funds to assure that all of those programs and those different locations are rated at a 3, 4, or 5-star rating. So that leaves us about 20 minutes for questions and answers, and I can see on the bottom of my screen that they have been pouring in. So bear with us for a second as we kind of get those organized, and we are going to read off some of the questions, and those that we have answers to, I'll be answering, and those that we don't, we will certainly try to get answers for our next webinar. I do want to let you know that we do have 2 additional webinars scheduled. The first one is for January the 15th. So for those of you that may have been either on the Early Childhood Education website or on the Early Childhood Ohio website and seen the notification about the 2 additional webinars that are coming up, I do want to let you all know that we do have a date change. We had originally anticipated that our next webinar was going to be December the 8th, and due to some conflicting schedules, we have pushed that back a week, and so now that is going to be on December the 15th.
January.
I'm sorry, not December, January the 15th. And then our second one is scheduled for February. I'm looking around the room.
I knew.
If you go to our website, I'm sorry, I don't have the date in front of me, but we do have another one scheduled in February as well. And again, some of the February the 18th. And so some of the questions that may come up today that we are not able to answer yet, we will definitely be taking those back and hopefully be able to provide some further information and clarification on the 2 additional webinars that are coming up. Okay.
Our first question, earlier and throughout the webinar, it was mentioned about eligible slots. Can you define what a slot is in this instance?
Sure. So a slot is just the funding that you receive for children. So it's $4,000 per slot. So when I say if you want additional slots, it's basically you want to serve additional children. And so, again, on the application that you will see coming out sometime in early spring, or you'll see that it will say how many slots do you want. And so if you want to serve 20 children, then you would put 20 there. So a slot basically just equals the amount of children that you're going to serve, and again, each slot is funded at a $4,000 per child amount.
If the slot is not filled with 4-year-olds, can 3-year-olds be accepted?
So right now, the way that the statutory language is written, it is for children who are who are 4 by the beginning of the school year. This is one of the things that we are seeking clarification with our legal, but as of right now, our direction is that it does need to be filled with 4-year-old children, not 3-year-old children, even if you're unable to fill it with a 4-year-old child.
Is there a rule in terms of how many children are in a particular class?
So in terms of the number of children that can be served in a particular class, you would need to follow the licensing regulations that by the department, either the Department of Education or the Department of Job and Family Services, that your program is licensed by.
So you require a ratio.
Can special education students be considered as an ECE slot since the district receives funding for special education purposes?
Right now, yes, special education children can be considered for an ECE slot. I will tell you that this is probably going to be one of the topics on the agenda for one of the next two webinars, because we have had a lot of questions regarding children who are enrolled in the preschool education program and what that looks like if they're also enrolled in an ECE slot. So stay tuned for more information about that, but the answer to that currently is yes. Preschool special education slots, children who are enrolled as preschool special education students can be considered to fill one of the ECE slots.
If we are opening a new program for the 2016-2017 school year, can we still qualify for funds?
No, you would not be eligible to receive ECE funding. It has to be in a new, it has to be in an existing location that's already licensed.
Are districts able to apply when not invited?
No, they are not. You have to be invited to participate or on the eligible provider list.
Will all children be provided a state SSID, and if so, when?
They will be provided an SSID number. Not sure exactly when they will be given that SSID number, so we'll have to provide additional information at a later time.
Can students be enrolled and counted in the funded number in an early childhood program and be served with PSE funds through itinerant services?
So that's in follow-up to the preschool special education question that I just addressed. And again, we are going to have more information about preschool special ed. We'll probably invite Sophie Hubble, who is our Assistant Director over preschool education, to join us on one of our next two webinars to get into more specific details about that.
Okay. Regarding student eligibility, does the student have to live within district boundaries?
No.
Can a registration fee be charged to early childhood education participants?
That's program specific. If the program would like to charge a registration fee, we have no requirements behind that. So
that is one of the questions, however, that programs are required to report out on the annual survey. So in addition to some of the health and developmental screening information that Star referenced earlier, there's also a section on the annual survey that talks about the sliding fee scale and if any additional fees are charged and if they're prorated at all for children who are in the early childhood education program versus children who are not participating in that program but that are enrolled in your program.
Okay. Our district is not currently star rated. How can we submit a registration? Do we need to be invited to submit that registration?
You do have to be invited. Programs from ODE are phased in, so you will be notified when your program is eligible to participate and step up to quality.
If you're a district that is not currently star rated or has not yet been invited, but you are an eligible district who is interested in applying for the early childhood education program next year, the same requirements in terms of hitting the April 1st and July 1st registration and rating recommended dates would apply to you as those that I referenced when speaking specifically about the Department of Job and Family Services licensed programs. And again, we've had conversations within our office. We'll be working closely with that particular unit to make sure that we're able to hit those deadlines.
This person writes that we currently have 82 early childhood slots that are outsourced to Head Start and developmental disability preschool programs. My district is looking to develop our own program. Will we be able to apply for a new license?
Hold on a second. Can you reread that? I'm sorry.
Certainly. We currently have 82 early childhood education slots that outsource both for Head Start and DD preschool programs. The district is looking to develop their own program. Will they be eligible to apply for a new license?
So I guess I would have to have more information. Do you currently have any licensed sites in your district right now? And if so, then yes, you would be able to provide services to ECE-funded children. If not, then you would not be eligible.
Thank you very much. Regarding birth dates and eligibility, would a child whose birth date is near the cutoff date, for example, August or September birthday, who is 5 at the start of the school year, not yet at compulsory school age, be eligible?
So right now, the way the law is written, it's for 4-year-old children who are not eligible to participate in kindergarten based on whatever the school district's cutoff date is in which the child resides. Again, this is one of the questions that we have had posed to us regarding children whose parents choose not to enroll them even though they're of compulsory age or that they're quickly approaching that date. So look for additional guidance around this particular issue, but the way that the law is written, it is children who are not eligible to participate based on the school district in which they reside's cutoff date.
Thank you very much. For currently enrolled programs for the fall reporting period, do the individual student applications need to be submitted or just started on the EAS?
So they need to be submitted and complete in the EAS system.
Will there be upcoming training, further trainings for ELA?
Yes, those dates are coming, and we will let you know when they are.
Right. So the ELA is the Early Learning Assessment, and the Early Learning Assessment is required currently to be used to assess children in both the fall and the spring for programs that are currently participating in the ECE program. There are also requirements for programs that are participating in Step Up to Quality at 3, 4, and 5-star rated levels in terms of they have to use the Early Learning Assessment when it's made available to them. That, again, is probably a topic where we'll spend a little bit of time on one of our future webinars to talk a little bit more specifically about the Early Learning Assessment, projected timelines, reporting, what that looks like, scores being reported through either the EMIS or the EAS data systems that Star referenced earlier. So look for additional information around the Early Learning Assessment in upcoming, as one of the upcoming webinar topics.
Thank you. You mentioned the annual survey. Is there a due date for this, and is that emailed to grantees?
Yes. So the annual survey is usually done sometime in middle to late spring, and it's a report out on basically the end of the school year in which we're currently in the middle of. And so programs that are currently receiving ECE funds will receive an email and information in terms of how to complete the survey. I think that you'll probably get a worksheet ahead of time to help you prepare for the survey so you can begin to collect the information, but it will be an online survey that programs will be required to fill out.
And it will only go to the grantee.
When is EAS available to programs?
It is available now.
So in terms of reporting early learning assessment information in the EAS for children, we're working on updating those particular screens with our data and technology people here within the Department of Education, but other child information should be able to be reported in the EAS system for programs that are currently funded.
Thank you. Just to clarify, do all ECE slots have to meet the requirement of 200% or below the poverty guideline?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unless the child is participating in preschool special ed.
Do you foresee that through the new calculation for eligible areas, a district that was not previously on the list for eligibility to be eligible now?
It's hard for me to answer that question because we don't have the data yet that will go into our calculations, so we have to wait on the kindergarten readiness assessment scores being entered, and then looking at the formula in terms of the other two factors that go into it. So it's hard to say now if programs that weren't previously, or school districts that weren't previously eligible will be eligible in the future. But we're, again, hoping to work with our data people to get those lists out as soon as possible so programs can begin to prepare if they are.
Excellent. And just to clarify, 2 questions prior, because we have received a few questions about this. A child who is over income but diagnosed with a disability, is that child eligible?
Yes.
Thank you. This is in regards, I think it was covered earlier, but I wanted, again, we had some more clarification regarding this. If, for the must-serve under licensed site, does that mean that a program must already be in place this year if they're looking for funding in fiscal year 17?
Yes.
And they do not currently operate a preschool, so that would mean they are ineligible at this time.
Right.
Thank you. What is EAS and who reports that information? To clarify that, thank you.
It's the enterprise application system, and the fiscal grantee is responsible, or the program contact is responsible for inputting all demographics, teacher qualifications, and student data into that system.
If they're not licensed by the Department of...
Right, if they are not licensed by ODE. ODE licensed programs will report in EMIS. Child care centers and charter non-pubs will report in the EAS system.
Thank you very much. Regarding student applications, if they hit submit on the student application, does that mean they're able to update the student daily attendance for the rest of the year?
Yes.
Does the EMIS coordinator for the district report the EAS information for the district, or does that vary between districts?
No.
If you're a district and you have an EMIS coordinator, then you would be using the EMIS system to report, not the EAS. So the EAS is not for programs or districts that are reporting through EMIS. It's kind of the system that was created and is used because programs don't have access to EMIS. So if you have access to EMIS and you're reporting through EMIS, then you don't need to worry about using EAS.
Thank you. It looks like we have time for one more question before we go to closing comments, Janine.
Okay.
For 2017 waiver requirements, would that not allow districts to enroll peer models in programs and use ECE funding because of our requirements?
So we have a question regarding waiver requirements and districts enrolling peer models in the preschool special education programs.
So if you are not meeting the ECE requirements this year, you're able to receive the waiver. Next year, you will have to meet that 455-hour minimum requirement in order to receive the funding.
So again, the whole preschool special education question is one I know that a lot of programs have, and so look for that probably because we have so many questions today. Hopefully if we can see if scheduling will allow, we'll ask Sophie to join us and we'll get some further clarification around the preschool special education questions. So now you have on your screen, hopefully, some contact information. You can see my email address there. If you go to the Early Childhood Education page within the Ohio Department of Education website, there is also contact information, and my email address for further questions that you might have is also listed there in case you don't get a chance to write it down while we're here. And again, I would encourage you to continue to visit that website frequently The information regarding the upcoming webinars is posted there, and like I said, hopefully within the next week or so, we'll have some additional information around specific topic areas that will be covered. You can also, again, like I said, look for guidance there. There are several different guidance documents, one specifically on calculating family eligibility, and as we move further towards fiscal year 17, updates around some of the alignment work and our timeline for getting the applications out there will all be posted on that website as we have more information as well. So I thank you all for joining us today and appreciate the good questions that came in, and look forward to the next webinar where we can share additional information. Thank you.